We'll begin with the Mincha service, the afternoon service, on page 102. Ashrei Yoshevetecha od Yalucha Selah. תהילת אדוני ידבר פיו, יברך כל בשר, שם קודשו לעולם ועד. ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם, הללויה. יתגדל ויתקדש שמך בה. ילמד יברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי. וחייכון ומכון וחי לכל בית ישראל. והגלה בזמן קריב. ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ומעמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתאמן וינשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי לקודשה בריחו. לעילם ינקום ברכתה ושירתה, תושחתה ונחמתה, דמירן ויעלמה, ואמרו, Amen. Page 106, we rise. We'll chant the beginning of the Mincha service on 106 and 108, and then continue silently through page 120.
שמך בעולם, השם שמע כשם.
שמך בעולם, השם שמע כשם אותו בשמי מעון, ואביך, וקרא זה ימה. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, כל הארץ כבודו, ימינו. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ויראת שכן כתוב לאמור. ימלוך אלוהים לעולם. Page 122, Yitgadal, Yitgadash, Mirabah, Yalma, Divrach, Yerute, Yamlich Malachute, V'chayechon v'mechon v'chayechon Beit Yisrael, V'agala v'zman kariv, Yimru, Amen, Yehesh Mirabah, V'chach, Le'olam Me'amaya, Yitbarach, V'shabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitramam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitale, V'yitalal, Shmei Dekutcha B'richu, Le'elam min koberta v'shirata tushchata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imru amen yesh lamarav min shamayim v'chaim alenem v'kol Yisrael v'imru amen oseh shalom v'imkomav uyaseh shalom aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Page 124. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol לתת גדולה לארצה ראשית שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגוהו עלינו ככל עמונה ואנו קוראים משתחווים ומודים לפני מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר ארץ. הגעתו בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו echad. Mourners remain standing for the Mourners Kaddish on 128. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Merabah, Yalma, Divrach, Yerute, Yamlich, Malchute, V'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chayei, V'chol Beit Yisrael, V'agala, V'zman Kariv, V'imru, Amen. Yehesh Merabah, V'orach, V'elam U'mei Maya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, Yitpa'ar, Yitramam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitale, V'yitalal, Shmei Dekutcha B'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata, V'shirata, Ushbechata, V'nechamata, Damiran B'alma, V'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu, V'yakol Yisrael, V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Yiramav, Uyas Shalom, Aleinu, V'yakol Yisrael, V'imru Amen. I explained yesterday that it's very traditional between Mincha and Marav, the afternoon and evening service, to teach a Mishnah, a section of rabbinic learning, as a way of connecting wisdom from our tradition to the life of the person who has died. Jerry's Hebrew name was Yosef Ruvain Lev Ben Yisrael V'chana, and yesterday we started with a Mishnah that began with his Hebrew letter, Yud, and today we'll continue with his second Hebrew letter, which is Vav. So the Mishnah I'm going to teach this evening begins with the letter Vav. It's kind of traditional to either pick teachings that begin with the same letters in the person's name, or that correspond to the Hebrew word neshama, which means soul. If you rearrange the letters of the word Mishnah, it spells out soul, neshama, and the idea is that the person's soul at this moment is ascending upward to heaven, and that these teachings accompany them. So this evening, the section that I am quoting from in the Mishnah is from Moed Katan, which is a section of the Mishnah that deals with laws of Chol Moed, the ordinary days or the intermediate days of Passover and Sukkot. This comes from chapter 2 in that tractate, the second teaching. And as background, the first Mishnah in that chapter cites a disagreement between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi as to whether one compelled to press olives on the intermediate days of Passover and Sukkot may complete the work in the usual manner. So there are two products that are cited in this Mishnah. Both were very expensive in the ancient world. One was olive oil, and the other was wine. The Mishnah that we're going to look at and discuss, it relates to the potential loss, monetary loss, of a valuable commodity like oil or like wine. And it begins like this. V'chein mi shehaya yeno b'toch habor. And likewise, one whose wine was in a vat in front of the wine press, ready to be poured into barrels. So what's happening here is the reality, the context in life is that there's a vat in front of the wine press into which the wine flows after the grapes are pressed. And if it's not transferred from there into the barrels, the wine will sour and you will lose your product. So the wine's been pressed, it's ready to go. Ve'er'o evel. And a period of mourning befell that person. He gets news that a loved one died in the family. During which time, by the way, during Shiva, it's forbidden to work. And the reason that is, say the rabbis, is that the person will forget to mourn. They go right back to work. They're not going to be thinking about the loved one who just died. So they're faced with a problem here, because if they begin mourning and don't take care of the product, they'll lose it'll result in a monetary loss from the wine going bad. And the Mishnah continues, O ones, or he experiences an unavoidable mishap, or his workers somehow deceived him. Zolef v'gomer yigaf kedarko. He can pour everything into the barrels and seal the barrels, even though it's work, in the usual manner, with a full-fledged seal. Divrei Rabbi Yossi. That is the ruling of Rabbi Yossi. So even though work is forbidden during Shiva, Rabbi Yossi allows the person to do the work of sealing up the wine in these barrels. And the question is why? Clearly, from his perspective, taking the time off from work in order to mourn is psychologically necessary. You can't just sweep loss underneath the carpet. If the person's thoughts are troubled, though, by what he might lose financially, then the rabbis are somewhat flexible in order to ensure that the person observes some form of mourning. So how does this work in contemporary life? Contemporary rabbinic scholars like Rabbi Isaac Klein rule that if a mourner is of modest means, it's hard for them to make a living, and they have to work in order to sustain themselves, they're permitted to return to work on the third day, after the third day of Shiva, meaning they only have to sit for 3 days, and they would have fulfilled their obligation. Notice that they don't just cancel out Shiva completely. They tell the person to observe it for less time. And then we get to something interesting. A physician, however, is permitted to see his patients during Shiva. So they say a doctor can work. And the question is why? Can't there be another physician that will fill in for him? And they actually say even if there are other physicians available, he has to work. Why? Because a patient has more confidence in his own physician. So in studying this Mishnah and these laws of mourning, I thought of Jerry. Jerry, for a long time, was a devoted member of Bethel Memorial Park's board, which dealt with our cemetery and with matters of death. And in his quiet, unassuming way, Jerry was concerned about the dignity of people in life and in death. As a family physician, Jerry was really an old-fashioned doctor, caring for all ages, making house calls, and never losing that awe at the miracle of birth. He loved his work, and he received the respect and love of his patients. We remember that side of Jerry as those who are in mourning rise and recite the Mourner's Kaddish on page 128. Yitgadal v'yitkadash me'rabah v'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael v'gala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba v'vorach le'olam u'me'amaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha brichu le'ela min kol berchata b'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata namiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shloma rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom imrama v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. We rise and turn to page 26 for the evening service. Seated. Page 28. Reading responsibly in the English on the bottom of 29. With everlasting love, you have loved us, O God, revealing yourself to us through Torah and mitzvot. For we have known the blessings of love and caring, and death cannot take these gifts from us. For while pain and suffering are real, your healing power is at work in our lives. From the darkness of our grief, O Lord, may rays of understanding shine forth. Nurturing our heritage of love and Torah, which reveal your presence anew in every age, we join in the Shema on page 30.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha ub'chol nafshecha ub'chol nefshecha v'hayu advarim ha'ela asher Anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'tibahta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha u'v'lechtecha v'terech u'v'shoftecha u'v'necha u'kishavtam liot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beinecha u'ritavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'bishtarecha ve'ayai Shema.
Continuing silently through 34.
Adonai Elohechem, Amen.
Emana kozot v'kayam aleinu.
Malchuto b'ratzon kiblu aleihem, Moshe v'nei Yisrael achanu shira b'simcha rabah, v'yamru kulam, mi chamocha ha'elim Adonai, mi chamocha netar ha'kodesh, norat hirot,
Adonai imlach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch ata Adonai La'al Yisrael.
Ashkivenu on page 38.
Adonai Elohim Hashem. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני שומר עמו ישראל לעם.
Responsively in the English in the bottom of 39, help us, O God, to lie down in peace and awaken us with confident trust for tomorrow. Guide them, O Lord, with your good counsel. Direct them toward the path of serenity. Help them to feel protected and sheltered, sustained, even in grief, by your compassion. Help them, O Lord, to lie down in peace. Awaken them with confident trust for tomorrow. Continuing with Chatzi Kaddish on 44. Amen.
וימכון חיי לכל בית ישראל, ועגלה בזמן קריב יאמרו אמן.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mvorach Le'olam U'Mayamaya.
יברך ישתבח יברך רומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי לקודשה.
Richu.
לעילם מקבלתה ושעתה, ושפחתה ונחמתה, תאמירן ביעלמה, יאמרו.
Amen. You rise for the Amida, which is recited silently from page 46 through 58. Continuing on page 60.
יגדל ויקדש שמך.
Amen.
יעמד יברך וטב ימליך מהותי בחייכון וימכון חיירו בית ישראל. ועגלה בזמן קריב יאמרו אמן.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mvorach Le'olam U'Mayamaya.
יברך ישתבח יברך ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי לקודשה.
Richu.
לעילם מקבלתה ושירתה, ושפחתה ונחמתה, תאמירן ביעלמה ויאמרו אמן.
Amen.
יהי שלום רבה מן שמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו
Amen.
עושה שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו אמן.
Page 62, we rise.
עלינו לשבח ולהתון ולהכון, לתת גיטה, ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו בחיי הרצון, ולא שמענו במשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חטאנו עליהם, וגוררנו ירוחם, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני לעולם ועד.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. היום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו Seated those in the process of mourning or observing Yahrzeit recite the Mourner's Kaddish on 68. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Me'rabah, V'alma, Divrach Yerute, V'yamlich Malchute, V'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chayed, Chol Beit Yisrael, V'agala, V'zman Kariv, V'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah, Mevorach, Le'olam U'me'almaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudsha Brichu. Le'elah min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, amiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom imama, uyad shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. So we're about to begin the memorial section of tonight's service for Dr. Jerry Melamed, beginning with Psalm 15, Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagur be'oalecha, mi yishkon behar kodshecha, holech tamim ufoel tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavo. לא רגל על לשונו, לא עשה לרעהו רעה, וחרפה לא נשא על קרובו. נבזה בעיניו נמאס ואת יראי אדוני יכבד, נשבע להרע ולא ימיר, כספו לא נתן בנשך, ושוחד על נקי לא לקח, עושה אלה לא ימות לעולם. A Psalm of David, who deserves to enter God's sanctuary? Who can merit a place in the presence of God? The one who lives with integrity, does what is right, speaks the truth without deceit, who has no slander upon his tongue, and does no evil to others, who does not mistreat his neighbor and spurns a contemptible person, the one who honors to revere the Lord, who never retracts a promise once made, the one who makes these deeds their own, and that person shall stand firm forever. In the book of Ben Sira, we read that we're all destined to die, that we share it with all who ever lived, with all who ever will be. Cry for the dead, hide not your grief, do not restrain your mourning. But remember that continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, let their memory be a source of peace and be consoled when the soul departs. Death is better than a life of pain, and eternal rest is better than constant sickness. Let us not seek to understand what is too difficult for us, nor search for what is hidden, nor be preoccupied with what is beyond, for we have been shown more than we can comprehend. As a drop of water in the sea, as a grain of sand on the shore, are our days few in eternity. The good things in life last for a short time, but a good reputation endures forever. I'd like to call on Debbie, Jerry's daughter, to read a psalm.
This is based on Psalm 77. When I cry, my voice trembles with fear. When I call out, it cracks with anger. How can I greet the dawn with song when darkness eclipses the rising sun? To whom shall I turn when the clouds of the present eclipse the rays of tomorrow? Turn me around to yesterday that I may be consoled by its memories. Did we not bless the bread that came from the heavens? Did your voice not reach my ears and direct me in my wanderings? The waters, the lightning, the thunder remind me of yesterday's triumphs. Let the past offer proof of tomorrow. Let it be our comforter and our guarantor. I have been here before, I have known the fright, and I have found your companionship. I enter the sanctuary again to await the echo of your promise.
The Israeli novelist Shai Agnon suggested that the mourner's Kaddish, which calls for magnifying God's name, is recited not only to comfort the bereaved, but to console the divine Creator, for whom the loss of every human being diminishes God's glory. God is a mourner at every death of God's creations. I feel that this is particularly true, and I'm sure that many of us agree, in the case of Dr. Jerry Melamed, Yosef Ruvain Leib Ben Yisrael V'Chana. With Jerry's death, God lost a devoted, noble servant, a mensch. When one lives a long life of 93 years, and especially when there is gradual, slow physical decline, there is a tendency to remember those final years. And I have to say, I'm really grateful, so grateful, for the fact that back in 2014, Temple Bethel decided to honor Jerry at its annual gala, when both he and the temple shared an 85th birthday. It really was a wonderful evening, and I can still see in my mind's eye the table at which Jerry and Ethel sat, surrounded by their loving family, filled with so much nachas and so much joy. Indeed, Jerry was such a proud family man. He would beam with pride and joy about telling me of his grandchildren's latest accomplishments, whether it was graduating from Bucknell University or whatever the simcha was. And you could be sure that if he and Ethel could be there, they were. I'd like to share some of what I wrote on that occasion of Jerry's 85th birthday, because I think it describes what many of us remember: a loyal temple servant, dedicated physician, and proud family man. Jerry was a soft-spoken, quiet man, and not one to draw attention to himself. But in many ways, Jerry exemplified the ideal of what it means to be a good Jew and decent human being. He was committed and dedicated to his Judaism. Over the years, Jerry was a regular participant in adult education, our Tikkun Leil Shavuot, and yearly Siyumim before Pesach. He was inquisitive about his Judaism and had a thirst for greater knowledge. And time and again, he would come up to me after services and say, "Hey, Rabbi, what does this mean? I don't understand this." Jerry's commitment, though, didn't merely rest on the theoretical level. He practiced what our tradition preaches. When it came time for daily morning minyan, Jerry was not only a regular, he kept that daily minyan going. He was the backbone of that daily minyan for many, many years. He was the one who unlocked the doors, turned on the lights, and adjusted the heat and AC, and locked up when the minyan was over. He was the one who assigned the aliyot and served as gabbai on Mondays and Thursdays. Like clockwork, Jerry was always there. His devotion to prayer applied not only to the weekday morning minyan, but to Shabbat morning services as well. Over the years, the minyan waxed and waned, but Jerry's loyalty remained constant. Even in recent months, when many were reluctant to return to this building, Jerry and Ethel made a special effort to be here on Shabbat. Up to the very last, even after suffering hospitalization from pneumonia, Jerry was here. He made it a point to be here, sitting right there. It's so fitting that this memorial service is taking place in the very room, sacred space that Jerry called his second home, and in the very worship space that he and Ethel shared. A major part of our building committee was the design of this very room. And I remember the first time I walked into the sanctuary, long before they had put on the finishing touches, I stood awed and amazed and recognized this as truly a sacred space. And that, in large part, for that, we have Jerry and Ethel to thank. But most important in my mind was Jerry's dedication to Gmilut Chasadim, acts of loving kindness. Jerry had a heart of gold. If someone needed a ride to the temple, Jerry was there. If someone was sick in the hospital, Jerry was there. When it came to matters of death and dying and maintenance of the cemetery, Jerry's allegiance was unstinting. These many acts performed by Jerry, many people did not see. But God saw, and God knew. And that is why Agnon's words are so apropos for Jerry. Mourner's Kaddish is said to comfort the Creator. For not only have we lost a true mensch, but God has lost a devoted, loyal servant. Tehi nishmato tzura b'tzor chaim. May his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. And let us say, Amen. I'd like to call on several family members to say a few words. First, on behalf of the grandchildren, Jake and Lee.
Everyone hear me? No? Better? Which one? All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Jake, Debbie and David's son, Jerry's middle grandson, here with my older brother, Lee. So before I get started, I feel like I should share some simple advice that our grandfather would always tell us every time we spoke, to always use good judgment. That being said, I think I have to make the good judgment call of not looking at my Uncle John during the entirety of these words. Otherwise, I don't think I'll be able to get through it very well. That goes for really this whole two front rows here. Thank you all so much for being here. I know a lot of you knew him as Jerry or Dr. Melamut, but I really can't help myself. I have to revert to him, to who he was to us, and that's simply Grandpa. Grandpa would be so happy to see all of you here. I just know he would take one good look at all of you, smile, and immediately break down crying. You know, Port in Providence on Tuesday, when we laid Grandpa to rest, and my mom and Grandma kept saying that it must be God crying, but I really feel like it must have been Grandpa, because only that guy cries that much when his entire family is all together. But that's just the kind of sensitive, kind, compassionate, and sentimental guy that he was. Kindness and compassion are the two words I've heard the most over the past few days when hearing things about our grandpa. Kindness, compassion, love, and empathy. He was this way to everyone in his life. His friends, his fellow congregates here at Bethel, his patients over the years, but he was especially this way towards his family, and specifically his 6 awesome grandchildren, Andrea, Rachel, Lee, Haley, myself, and Alec. And he adored his great-granddaughter, Emma Jean, and of course, Mark, Ashley, Tommy, and all of his many granddogs and great-granddogs along the way. There's too many to name, so I won't do it. He loved us all so incredibly much. But coming from a grandchild, and I believe my brother and cousins most likely believe the same thing, is that Grandpa taught us so much more than just being kind and compassionate towards others, and that was also to be just as kind and compassionate towards ourselves. Grandpa was so proud of everything that each and every one of his grandchildren had accomplished. He was so proud of us that he made sure to have every one of us call him and Grandma once a month on the day that coincides with each of our birthdays. I was always most excited for our May call, as my favorite thing to do on my birthday call on May 7th was wish him a happy early birthday on May 8th. These calls meant so much to him and to all of us, as he could hear about everything going on in our lives and what we had accomplished. He was always so excited to listen to our stories and offer kind words of advice and wisdom. People would ask him how his grandchildren were doing, and he could do nothing else but brag about how amazing we all were, and the fact that he got to speak to all of us every single month. And I just know that what he always wanted was for all of his grandchildren to be as proud of ourselves as he was of us. Grandpa, thank you for everything you taught us. We'll always remember your love of loud whistling, peanuts, golf, slipping us cash from time to time, your infatuation with the picture quality on high-definition flat-screen TVs, reading every part of the Seder, and most importantly, your wife Ethel and loving family. I'll leave you all with the same bit of advice that Grandpa always left with his grandkids. Always remember to use good judgment. Follow your heart and everything else will fall into place. I advise you all to follow these words, and I truly believe that we can continue to pass down the same kindness, compassion, and pride to the younger generations of this family forever. Thank you, Grandpa. Love you, and so long. I'll call you on the 7th.
Next, we'll hear from John.
Jake, that was great. Thank you. I think most of you know me, and of course you all knew my father. So you'll not be surprised when I struggle to get through this, because I inherited the Melamed crying gene. As most of you know, the Melamed clan can get emotional quickly. I will do my best, which is what my dad would want. The crying comes from caring deeply about family. My dad showed this in different ways, big and small, from clipping articles he would mail and email many of us that he thought we would be of interest to our kids, to leading blessings at his grandchildren's mitzvahs, and taking great care of his mother as she got older, to helping his brother Jay and his sister Shirley in any way he could, and giving rides to those who needed transportation to the synagogue, to doing everyday things for my mother, who he cared for more than anything else in the world. My dad was really a lucky man. He married the love of his life, my mother, for 68 years. He told me earlier this summer how much he liked that they slept in the same bed and kissed every night before going to sleep. He raised 3 children who have gone on to have families of their own, something that gave him great joy. He also had good friends throughout his long life and career that gave him a chance to help people, which was the most important to him in both his professional and personal life. When he wasn't helping his patients, he enjoyed helping members of the community, especially at his Bethel community. My dad had a little brother, Jay, that he loved very much. Dad was 14 years older and always wanted to take care of Jay. My dad promised his mother that he would keep Jay safe, so he did. For example, when they drove in the car, my dad would tie Jay to the seats, because of course this was before there were seatbelts. He also had friends who were like brothers to him. Harvey Weintraub, his cousin. Harvey and my dad were born only weeks apart and grew up only one house away. They were lifelong friends whose wives were also lifelong friends even before meeting their husbands. Jerry Popick, who lived up the street when I was growing up, who was also brother to my dad, sharing many family times, including taking our family on sailing trips. And then my dad's business partner, Bill Lozinger. We called him Dr. Bill, who was also his medical school classmate and also like a brother to my dad. My dad liked to say he had two great partnerships in life, my mom and Dr. Bill. Knowing my dad, he probably had many other brothers, including a friend. When they were both 16, they wanted to go into the Army together. But at 16, you can't enlist without permission from your parents. So each of the friends told their parents that the other had given permission, and they needed to also give permission so they'd be together in the Army. My dad told me very quickly after they both enlisted, he and his friends were sent to different places, and they didn't see each other again while they were in the service. My dad was fortunate to have my family and I were very fortunate to have so many years with my dad. Given his sharp mind and positive attitude, I was in a little denial that he would not always be there with me and our family. He taught me life lessons about caring for others and showed me through his actions about the importance of caring and hard work to provide for one's family. After running a successful small business, Jerry's Chemist Shop, you all know he went to medical school. 3/4 of the way through, another mouth came along, me. To support his family, he ran a successful medical practice and worked nights in the hospital. I recall thinking it was kind of neat that he got to sleep at the hospital. It was kind of like a sleepover. I was a little jealous. I'm sure in retrospect, he didn't like being away from his family. Regardless of the work, he always found time in between to be with the family. My dad took the opportunity to teach me things. This has included how to play games, how to ride a bike, how to drive a car, play golf, put on tefillin, or some other practical things like how to fix the inside of a toilet or the hinge on a door. Once we went to an Eagles game on a very frigid day in December, and he taught me that you can go to the restroom to warm up, even if you don't have to go to the bathroom. I also remember that later in the evenings, around 9 o'clock, he would have to go downstairs to the basement to do paperwork to take care of family finances and other head of household responsibilities. As I said, he showed me through his daily life how to be a man. Growing up, my father was always patient with me. I really do not recall him pressuring me on anything. This could be selective memory, but I don't mind. If he had a specific goal or target for me in mind, I'm not sure what that was, other than to just try and do my best. I don't think I realized growing up, but I came to realize as a young adult that if I tried my best, he would be proud of me no matter what. He was my #1 fan. He was always very inquisitive and exposed me to technology while growing up. He really liked technology, and now I think I may owe my interest and career in technology to him. I remember when I was young, my mother and he gave me a digital watch that could display the time, date, and even a stopwatch. It had 4 buttons. I thought it was so cool. I remember thinking that, I remember thinking it was the coolest gift ever. He had one as well, so for a while we had matching watches. When mine became hard to use, of course he gave me his, because that's who the father he was. He went on to have many more gadgets from having an early Palm Pilot to smartphones to streaming services and more recently navigating family Zoom calls that started at the beginning of the pandemic. I'm sure many of you have witnessed his technical expertise when you've heard him tell Alexa, "Pause TV." I'll share that I was jealous of being able to do this. So when Sharon and I needed a new TV, I convinced her to get an Amazon Fire TV. We love the TV, but we can't get it to pause yet. I will keep trying, as my dad taught me not to give up. He was a lifelong learner who enjoyed learning new technologies, especially if it helped him connect with his family. After my sisters and I graduated from college and moved away, my dad got more involved in the synagogue. This included serving on formal committees, attending daily minyan, and giving rides to others and other mitzvot. As the rabbi said, talked about him opening up, I think this was possibly, his biggest honor that he enjoyed the most, having the responsibility of opening the synagogue in the mornings. This past June, Alec and I got to spend an afternoon with him while the women in our family celebrated at a bridal shower for Haley. We went to lunch, talked and walked, enjoyed each other's company. I don't remember exactly what we talked about, but I'm sure it was about technology and family, because that always dominated the conversation. All of his grandchildren, children, siblings, cousins, nieces, nephews, and friends knew this. For the past year, there have been two topics dominating the conversation: seeing my daughter Haley get married to Tommy and the birth of his second great-grandchild. While he will not be able to participate in those events physically, he will be in our hearts and thoughts at those times and always. Dad, you had a long and successful life, rich with friends and family. You left a legacy for generations to come that I'm proud to be a part of. I'm not saying goodbye, I'm saying so long.
Brenda?
It really means a lot to have family and friends at this time. And as I sat here looking around at this temple, it's not the temple I grew up in, but it is. We have the ceiling, we have the windows, and we have each other. For Mom and his friends, he was Jerry. His business partner called him Doc. His brother thought of him as a superhero. To his grandchildren, he was Grandpa. And almost 2 years ago, he became Zadie. But to Debbie, John, and me, he was first Daddy and then just Dad. Our memories are of family, and with all Dad's many civic and professional accomplishments, Dad took most joy in his family. Each of us have different memories of Dad. For me, they usually come as snapshots and the stories you tell around pictures. My earliest memory is watching Shirley Temple movies with Dad in the den at our home in Cranston, Rhode Island, while Mom was teaching Sunday school. Time jumps and we moved to Philadelphia when I was 4 and Debbie was just 2. Even at 4 years old, my dad started teaching me life lessons. The first lesson was it was okay to take a calculated risk and change your career by going back to school after working 9 years and with a family. That gave me the courage to know it was okay for Lindsay to do the same when he started his business with Andrea only 2.5 and Rachel 3 weeks old. The second lesson is a strong work ethic. During his 4 years in medical school, Dad would go to school all day, then after dinner he would retreat to the basement in our row home in Philadelphia and study. He even worked evenings as a pharmacist to help earn money. I think my siblings and I all have that same strong work ethic, and I believe it's because we saw Dad do it every day. A couple of more memories from Philadelphia. Once while at dinner, Mom and Dad wanted to teach us not to put our elbows on the table. So Dad taught us that elbows are called olecranons. So it was always funny when Dad or Mom would say, "Get your Lebanons off the table." As we were growing up, we mostly had to travel to see family, whether back in Rhode Island. We took long road trips from Philadelphia to visit Grandma and Grandpa Melamud and the Gandelmans. I remember we would often drive at night in the white Rambler station wagon. That was before there were seat belts, and we could climb in the way back, as we called it, and watch the stars and try to sleep. The last big memory from Philadelphia was Dad's graduation from medical school. By then, I was already 8 years old, and I really understood what Dad had accomplished. It's not many people that can say their dad graduated college 10 years before they graduated high school, but I can. We moved to Allentown, and that was the beginning of another chapter of Dad's life. When I was in high school, I worked in Dad's office in the summers, and I got to see him as a doctor. He was so kind and compassionate. He liked to take his time with patients. So when I was booking appointments, I could book 5 an hour for Dr. Bill, Dad's partner, but only 4 an hour for Dad, and he still ran late. That caring and compassion was a theme always in Dad's life. I cannot remember him raising his voice as we were growing up. He was always the voice of reason and saw the best in people. As I started to think about heading off to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. In the late 70s, I had no idea there was a glass ceiling thanks to Mom and Dad. They made me feel like I could do anything, and it made all the difference. Most of all, Dad found so much joy in his family. He was proud of the 3 of us, not just for our professional accomplishments, but also for who we became as adults. The partners we chose to marry, he loved Lindsay, David, and Sherry. He was a loving grandfather to Andrea, Rachel, Lee, Jake, Haley, and Alec, and he was so excited to welcome Mark, Ashley, and very soon Tommy into the family. He became a Zadie and loved seeing Emma Jane on Zoom, but the best were his trips to Rhode Island when he could be with Emma and all of us in person. He told the doctor last Thursday he was so looking forward to Haley and Tommy's wedding and welcoming Emma's sister in just 4 weeks. Dad, you loved Mom and the rest of the family so much. You will be missed, but you'll be with us every day. We love you.
Now I would like to call on Cantor Wartell to chant the memorial prayer of the El Malay, and I ask that you rise.
El Molei Rachamim Shochein B'amad Romi Hametzeh Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanefei Ashkinah במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כי זוהר הרקיע. מזהירים את נשמות יוסף ראובן לב בן ישראל וחנה, שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן, בגן עדן דהי מנוחתו. אנא הרחמים הסתירהו בשאת כנפיך לעולמים. ותצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. Adonai hu. נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר Amen.
Especially in death and in mourning, the power of community is so, so strong. And that's why I often explain the greeting to mourners, Hamakom Yinachem Etchem B'toch Shar Avelei Tzion V'Yerushalayim, as understanding that first word makom not as God, which often it means, but as place, your community, should bring you comfort in the days, months, and throughout this year. We ask that everyone remain in their places. I'll have the Melmet family leave first. If you'd like to extend your condolences, we have a space in the auditorium for people to join them there.